The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning. Not by mail. Not through a lawyer. But in the middle of Olivia Carter's birthday breakfast. The dining room of the elegant lakeside restaurant fell silent as a sharply dressed woman walked directly to their table and placed a thick envelope beside Olivia's untouched coffee. "I'm sorry," the woman said politely. "You've officially been served." Every conversation nearby stopped. Forks froze halfway to plates. Even the pianist in the corner hesitated for a single note before continuing. Olivia looked down at the envelope without touching it. Across the table, her husband, Ethan Carter, calmly folded his napkin. There wasn't an ounce of surprise on his face. Only relief. "I'm glad it's finally over," he said. The words landed harder than the papers themselves. Olivia slowly lifted her eyes. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. Today marked 22 years of marriage. 22 years since they had stood inside a small church outside Boston promising to love each other through every season of life. Now, on the morning of her 46th birthday, he was ending everything between bites of expensive steak. Around them, strangers pretended not to stare. Nobody succeeded. A little girl sitting 2 tables away whispered to her mother, "Why is that lady crying?" Only then did Olivia realize tears had begun running silently down her cheeks. She hadn't even felt them. Ethan reached for his glass of orange juice. "I think it's better if we don't make this emotional." She stared at him in disbelief. "Emotional?" He sighed as though she were exhausting him. "I've already spoken with my attorney. The house stays with me. The company stays with me. I'll provide a settlement. I've been more than generous." Generous. The word echoed through her mind. Generous. As though 22 years together could be reduced to a financial transaction. Before she could answer, another voice interrupted. "I told you she'd react like this." Olivia turned. Standing only a few feet away was Ethan's mother. Margaret Carter. Perfectly dressed. Perfectly composed. Perfectly satisfied. She hadn't arrived by accident. She had been waiting. Margaret slowly approached the table. "I warned my son years ago." She spoke loudly enough for nearby diners to hear. "A woman who gives up her career eventually has nothing left to offer." Olivia looked at her quietly. "I gave up my career because Ethan asked me to." Margaret smiled coldly. "And that was your mistake." She folded her expensive coat over one arm. "A smart woman never depends on a man." Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody spoke. Margaret continued. "My son built an empire. You simply lived inside it." Olivia lowered her eyes toward the divorce papers. Empire. She remembered another word. Promise. That was the word Ethan had used 22 years earlier. "I promise you'll never regret choosing our family." She had believed him. Back then he owned nothing more than an old pickup truck and a tiny contracting business operating from a rented garage. She had believed in him before anyone else did. Even before his own family. Especially before his own family. Now. None of that seemed to matter. Ethan stood. "I have another meeting." He adjusted his tailored navy jacket. "I'd appreciate it if you moved out before the end of the month." Olivia blinked. "You expect me to leave our home?" "Our home?" He almost laughed. "My house." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Exactly." Without another word, Ethan picked up his car keys. A young blonde woman waiting near the restaurant entrance smiled as he approached. She couldn't have been older than 30. She slipped her arm through his. Naturally. Comfortably. As though this had been happening for quite some time. Olivia recognized her immediately. Claire. The marketing director from Ethan's company. The woman he had insisted was just part of the executive team. He hadn't even waited until the divorce papers were signed. Together, they walked toward the exit without looking back. Margaret followed proudly behind them. 3 people. 1 family. None of them turned around. The restaurant felt strangely quiet after they left. A waiter approached carefully. "Ma'am. Would you like me to call someone?" Olivia looked through the large windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Rain had begun falling. Slowly. Steadily. She shook her head. No. She gathered the papers with trembling hands. As she stood, something small slipped from her handbag onto the wooden floor. A brass key. Old. Heavy. Worn smooth with age. The waiter bent to pick it up. "You dropped this." She smiled faintly. "Thank you." He handed it back. "Curious?" he asked. "It looks antique." Olivia wrapped her fingers tightly around it. "It opens something my father told me never to forget." She slipped it into her coat pocket. Far across the city. Inside the tallest building bearing the name Carter Development Group. A locked safe waited quietly behind an old oak bookshelf. Inside that safe rested documents Ethan Carter had never seen. Documents signed more than 20 years ago. Documents that would change everything he believed he owned. And for the first time since the divorce papers touched the table, Olivia stopped crying. Because she finally remembered the promise she had once made to her father. Never argue with people who think they know the whole story. Simply let the truth arrive when it's ready. Olivia didn't go home. Not immediately. Instead, she drove north along the shoreline until the city disappeared behind her. The rain tapped gently against the windshield, blurring the traffic lights into streaks of red and gold. She finally stopped in front of a small brick building that hadn't changed in decades. The faded sign above the door read, "Law Offices of William Harper." She hadn't been there in almost 12 years. Yet somehow, the elderly receptionist recognized her instantly. "Mrs. Carter." Her smile softened. "It's been a long time." Olivia nodded politely. "Is Mr. Harper still working?" The receptionist smiled. "He always says retirement is for people who don't love what they do." A few moments later, the office door opened. William Harper looked much older than she remembered. His hair was completely white now. But his sharp blue eyes hadn't changed. "Olivia." He stood without hesitation. "I was wondering when you'd come." She frowned. "You were expecting me?" William gave a quiet smile. "No. I was expecting life." He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. "Life has a habit of bringing people back when they're finally ready." She sat silently. For nearly a minute, neither of them spoke. Finally, William broke the silence. "He asked you to leave the house." It wasn't a question. She looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Because your father knew Ethan. He predicted this exact moment 22 years ago." Olivia's heartbeat quickened. "My father?" William slowly stood and walked toward an old steel filing cabinet tucked into the corner of his office. From the lowest drawer, he removed a thick leather folder covered in dust. He placed it carefully on the desk. Across the front, written in neat handwriting, were 5 simple words. "For Olivia. If necessary." Her breath caught. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her father's. Samuel Bennett. A quiet man. A carpenter. A businessman few people ever truly understood. He had died only 6 months after her wedding. Before meeting his grandchildren. Before seeing Ethan's company become successful. William gently opened the folder. Inside were dozens of documents. Property records. Corporate agreements. Letters. Trust papers. Every page carried signatures. Some hers. Some her father's. Some Ethan's. She stared at them in confusion. I've never seen these. William looked at her carefully. You signed them. You simply never realized what you were signing. 22 years earlier, Ethan's construction business had been drowning in debt. Banks had refused another loan. Suppliers demanded payment. Payroll was 2 weeks overdue. He had been days away from bankruptcy. Olivia remembered those nights. She remembered Ethan sitting at their tiny kitchen table with unpaid invoices scattered everywhere. She remembered him crying once. Only once. I've failed. She had wrapped her arms around him. We'll figure it out. And they had. Or at least, she believed they had. William slid another document across the desk. Do you remember selling your father's lake cabin? Her eyes widened. Of course. It broke my heart. It was the only thing he left me. You told Ethan the money came from an investment account. She nodded slowly. I didn't want him feeling guilty. William folded his hands. The cabin sold for nearly $2 million. Olivia looked down. I know. Every dollar went into Carter development. She whispered. Yes. William nodded. Your father insisted on one condition. He pointed toward another document. The investment would remain legally protected. Olivia read the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Her breathing slowed. No. William remained silent. This can't be right. It is. My father. He transferred. She looked up. The company? William answered calmly. Not entirely. But enough. He pushed one final document toward her. 51%. The words blurred before her eyes. She blinked several times. Majority ownership. William nodded. Your father trusted your judgment. He admired Ethan. But he never trusted his ambition. Silence filled the office. Outside, thunder rolled across the lake. Olivia slowly leaned back. For 22 years. William finished her sentence. You've legally owned the controlling interest in Carter development. She couldn't speak. She remembered every long night. Every sacrifice. Every cancelled vacation. Every birthday Ethan had missed. Every promise she believed. All that time. She hadn't been living in Ethan's company. He had been building his future inside hers. William opened the final envelope inside the folder. This arrived yesterday. Inside were photographs. Ethan. Claire. Luxury hotels. Private vacations. Corporate credit card statements. William's expression darkened. Our investigators were hired after unusual financial reports appeared. He paused. The evidence is overwhelming. Olivia looked at him. I don't want revenge. I know. William smiled gently. Your father said you'd say exactly that. She almost laughed through her tears. He knew me that well? He knew you better than anyone. William carefully closed the folder. But this is no longer about revenge. It's about truth. Olivia stood and walked toward the office window. The rain had finally stopped. Sunlight slowly broke through the clouds. For the first time that day, she smiled. Not because Ethan was about to lose everything, but because she finally understood something her father had tried to teach her years ago. Real ownership isn't proven by the name on the building. It's proven by the sacrifices no one else ever sees. And very soon, Ethan Carter was about to discover exactly who had built the foundation beneath his entire life. The news spread through Carter Development before Ethan even realized anything was wrong. It began with whispers. Then cautious conversations behind closed office doors. Then silence whenever he walked past. On Monday morning, he entered the executive floor carrying his usual confidence. Employees greeted him politely. But something had changed. People avoided eye contact. His assistant stood the moment he approached. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." "Morning. You have a board meeting at 10. He frowned. "I didn't schedule one. It was scheduled by the board of directors. The entire board requested your attendance." That surprised him. Usually, he chaired every executive meeting. Today, someone else had called it. Across town, Olivia parked outside a quiet cemetery. She carried a small bouquet of white lilies. The morning air was cool, and the trees moved gently in the breeze. She stopped before a simple granite headstone. Samuel Bennett. 1948 to 2004. She knelt slowly. "I finally opened the folder." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "You knew." A faint smile crossed her face. "You knew exactly how this would end." She placed the flowers carefully beneath the stone. "For years I thought you doubted Ethan." She shook her head. "You didn't. You were protecting me." She remained there for several quiet minutes. Then she reached into her handbag. The old brass key rested inside her palm. She smiled. "I think it's finally time." Back at Carter Development. The executive boardroom was unusually crowded. Directors. Outside legal counsel. Senior financial officers. Independent auditors. Everyone sat silently. Ethan entered with a confident smile. "What seems to be so urgent?" No one answered. Instead, Board Chairman Robert Hastings stood. "Please have a seat." Ethan noticed something strange. His chair had been moved. It no longer stood at the head of the table. He frowned. "What is this?" Robert remained calm. "Today's meeting concerns corporate governance." Ethan laughed lightly. "Then let's begin." Robert opened a thick folder. "Last week our auditors completed an ownership verification requested by corporate counsel." Ethan shrugged. And they discovered documentation that had never been reviewed after the company's original restructuring 22 years ago. For the first time, Ethan stopped smiling. "What documentation?" Robert slowly slid several certified copies across the polished table. "You should recognize these signatures." Ethan picked up the first page. His own signature. The date. 22 years earlier. He skimmed the document. Then another. Then another. His expression changed. "No." He looked up. "This isn't possible." Corporate counsel answered quietly. "It has already been verified. There are no legal disputes regarding authenticity." Ethan's hands tightened around the papers. "There must be a mistake." "There isn't." Robert folded his hands. "The majority shareholder of Carter Development has never been you." The room became perfectly still. Every executive watched him. "The majority shareholder," Robert continued, "has always been Olivia Bennett Carter." Silence. Complete silence. Ethan laughed once. A nervous laugh. "No. I built this company." One board member spoke gently. "You managed it. Those are not the same thing." Another director added. The original capital investment represented more than 90% of the company's founding assets. Corporate counsel continued. The investment agreement granted 51% controlling ownership. Ethan stared at the documents again. His breathing became uneven. I never knew. Robert nodded. We believe that. But legally, it changes nothing. At that exact moment, Olivia unlocked the old safe hidden behind the bookshelf inside her late father's study. The brass key turned smoothly despite the years. Inside rested dozens of leather-bound journals, letters, photographs. One small wooden box. She opened it carefully. On top lay a handwritten envelope. For my daughter. Her hands trembled. Inside was a letter. Olivia. If you are reading this, then life has become difficult. Don't be angry with Ethan. Ambition changes people slowly. Sometimes so slowly they never notice it themselves. I never protected the money. I protected you. If the day ever comes when someone tells you that you own nothing, remember what your mother taught you. The strongest foundations are buried where no one can see them. Love, Dad. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She folded the letter carefully. Then closed the box. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about gratitude. Meanwhile, Claire sat inside Ethan's office scrolling through real estate listings. She looked up as he burst through the door. His face had lost all color. We have a problem. She smiled. What happened? He threw the documents onto his desk. You need to read these. After only a few pages. Her smile disappeared. What? She whispered. Who is Olivia Bennett? Ethan slowly lowered himself into his chair. My wife. Claire stared at him. You mean? He nodded. For 22 years. I've been working for my own wife. Neither of them spoke again. Because somewhere deep inside, they both understood. This was only the beginning. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his office long after every light in the building had gone dark. The stack of documents remained open on his desk. Every page carried his signature. Every signature was real. He remembered signing dozens of papers during the company's first year. Bank loans. Investment agreements. Insurance forms. His attention had been on surviving another month. Olivia had handled the paperwork. Or rather, William Harper had. He never imagined those documents would one day determine who truly owned the company. At 2:17 a.m., his phone rang. It was his mother. Ethan? I heard about the board meeting. He rubbed his temples. Who told you? People talk. She paused. Tell me it isn't true. He couldn't. The silence answered for him. Margaret's voice became sharp. There has to be a way around this. There isn't. Then fight. I can't. You built that company. I managed it. He closed his eyes. Legally. It belongs to Olivia. Margaret refused to believe it. She planned this. No. Dad planned it. What? He protected her before we were even married. Margaret said nothing. For the first time in years. She had no argument. The next morning, every major business newspaper carried the same headline. Carter Development announces emergency leadership review. The article didn't mention Ethan by name. Not yet. But investors immediately began asking questions. Television crews gathered outside corporate headquarters. Employees whispered throughout the building. Claire arrived wearing expensive sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. She hurried toward Ethan's office. "We need to make a statement." He looked exhausted. "There isn't anything to say." She sat across from him. "We tell everyone the documents are fraudulent. They've already been authenticated. We sue." "For what?" Claire's confidence began fading. "There has to be something." "There isn't." He quietly handed her another folder. Corporate expense reports. Private flights. Luxury vacations. Jewelry purchases. Hotel suites. Everything paid using company funds. Every transaction. Every receipt. Every signature. Claire slowly looked up. "They found everything." He nodded once. Neither of them noticed the security director standing outside the glass office. Watching. Waiting. Across the city. Olivia stood inside the company's original warehouse. It had been preserved exactly as it looked 22 years earlier. The old wooden workbench still stood in the corner. Rusty tools remained hanging neatly on the wall. Black and white photographs covered one side of the room. Young construction workers. The first delivery truck. The tiny office Ethan had proudly painted himself. She smiled sadly. Those had been happy years. Before money changed everything. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mrs. Carter." She turned. Robert Hastings entered quietly. "I hoped I'd find you here." She smiled. "My father loved this place." Robert nodded. So did Ethan. For a moment. Neither of them spoke. Finally Robert asked, "Have you decided?" She knew exactly what he meant. "The board wants me to become CEO." "Yes." "And?" She looked around the warehouse. "I don't want power." Robert smiled gently. "The best leaders rarely do." She laughed softly. "My father used to say exactly that. He taught many of us." Robert handed her a small envelope. The board voted unanimously. She opened it. Inside was a formal appointment. Chief Executive Officer. Effective immediately. She stared at it for several seconds. Then folded it carefully. "I'll accept. But on one condition." Robert waited. No public celebration. No press conference. No speeches about victory. He nodded. "I expected nothing less." At noon. Every executive received an emergency email. Mandatory company-wide meeting. Attendance required. Main auditorium. 1 hour. More than 700 employees gathered. Construction supervisors. Architects. Engineers. Receptionists. Interns. Nobody knew why. Ethan entered through the side door. Conversations immediately stopped. Some employees looked sympathetic. Others looked confused. Claire tried standing beside him. Security politely stopped her. "I'm sorry. Executive guest privileges have been suspended." Her face turned pale. "What?" "I'm afraid you'll need to wait outside." She stared toward Ethan. He never looked back. The lights dimmed. Robert Hastings walked onto the stage. "Good afternoon. As many of you know, our company is entering a new chapter." A large screen illuminated behind him. The company logo slowly faded. In its place appeared an old photograph. A tiny construction site. A young Ethan. A smiling Olivia. Standing side by side. Covered in dust. Holding blueprints. The audience smiled. Many older employees remembered those days. Robert continued. Success is never built by one person. Sometimes, the people who sacrifice the most receive the least recognition. He looked toward the front row. Today, we intend to correct that. The auditorium doors slowly opened. Every head turned. Olivia walked inside. Simple navy suit. No designer jewelry. No bodyguards. No dramatic entrance. Only quiet confidence. One by one, employees began standing. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium rose to its feet. Not because she owned the company. Because many of them remembered. She had attended retirement parties. Visited injured workers in hospitals. Sent flowers when employees lost loved ones. Paid college tuition for children without ever attaching her name. Most had never realized who she truly was. Now they did. The applause echoed through the building. Ethan remained seated. Watching. Realizing that the respect filling the room had never belonged to him. The applause lasted nearly a minute. Olivia stood quietly at the center of the stage, waiting for the room to settle. She didn't smile with satisfaction. She wasn't there to celebrate someone's downfall. When the auditorium finally became silent, she stepped toward the microphone. 22 years ago, she began softly. This company had 12 employees, 1 truck, and more debt than hope. A gentle laugh spread across the audience. I remember painting office walls after midnight. I remember bringing coffee to construction crews before sunrise. I remember answering customer calls while rocking my newborn daughter to sleep. Several longtime employees nodded. They remembered those days too. I never expected recognition. I simply believed in a dream. She paused. The problem wasn't that my name was forgotten. The problem was that kindness was mistaken for weakness. The room became completely still. Robert Hastings stepped beside her. In accordance with the unanimous vote of the board of directors, he unfolded a document. Olivia Bennett Carter is officially appointed Chief Executive Officer of Carter Development. Thunderous applause erupted once again. Robert continued. Effective immediately. Mr. Ethan Carter is removed from all executive authority. His employment is terminated. The board has also approved an independent financial investigation regarding the misuse of corporate assets. The audience fell silent. Everyone understood what those words meant. 2 security officers approached Ethan. Neither looked pleased. Neither looked angry. They were simply doing their jobs. Mr. Carter. One of them spoke respectfully. We'll escort you to collect your personal belongings. Ethan didn't move. He looked only at Olivia. Can I speak with you? She nodded. Outside. 10 minutes later. They stood alone in the quiet courtyard behind the headquarters. The city traffic hummed faintly in the distance. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. I loved you. Olivia looked at him calmly. I believe you did. He lowered his eyes. So how did we end up here? She answered honestly. You stopped seeing me. You started seeing only what I could no longer give your ambition. He shook his head. I made mistakes. You made choices. I can fix this. She smiled sadly. No. You can become a better man. But you can't return to the person you chose to stop being. Tears filled his eyes. I never knew the company was yours. She answered quietly. That's exactly why my father created the agreement. He frowned. He expected this? No. He hoped he was wrong. But he wanted to make sure I would never lose everything because I loved someone. Ethan covered his face with both hands. I threw away my family. You threw away their trust. She gently corrected him. Trust takes much longer to rebuild. Across the parking lot, Claire waited impatiently beside her car. When she saw Ethan walking toward her carrying only a cardboard box, she stared in disbelief. That's it? He nodded. They terminated me. She crossed her arms. So, what do we do now? He looked at her for several long seconds. Then quietly answered. I don't know. Claire sighed. I didn't sign up for this. She took one last look at the nearly empty box. Then climbed into her car. Without another word, she drove away. Ethan never tried to stop her. For the second time in 1 month, someone he trusted walked away without looking back. Margaret sat alone inside her large house that evening. The television replayed business reports about Carter development. Every channel showed the same image. Olivia shaking hands with employees. One reporter said. Many workers described the new CEO as the heart of the company long before anyone knew her true role. Margaret switched off the television. For years she had measured people by status. Now, she realized she had spent decades insulting the person who had quietly protected everything her son owned. She whispered into the empty room. I was wrong. There was no one there to hear it. 6 months later, Carter development had never been stronger. Employee satisfaction reached record levels. Safety programs expanded. Scholarships were created for apprentices entering the construction industry. Every year, the company announced a new initiative called the Samuel Bennett Foundation, honoring the quiet carpenter whose wisdom had protected an entire family. Olivia never placed her own name on the buildings. She insisted every project carry the names of the workers who built them. One autumn afternoon, she stood outside a newly completed community center. Children laughed on the playground nearby. William Harper joined her. Your father would be proud. She smiled. I hope so. William looked across the construction site. You could have destroyed Ethan. She nodded. But then I would have become someone my father never raised. At that moment, Ethan appeared across the street. His clothes were simple now. No expensive watches. No luxury car. He had found work supervising small renovation projects for a local contractor. He noticed Olivia. For a brief moment, their eyes met. He gave a quiet nod. She returned it. Nothing more was needed. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. They end with understanding. As the sun began to set, Olivia looked toward the workers finishing the final details on the community center. She smiled. Her father had once told her. Strong buildings don't begin with beautiful walls. They begin with invisible foundations. The same was true of families. The strongest ones were built on love, trust, humility, and respect. And once those foundations were broken, no amount of wealth could hold the walls together. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that true character is worth more than money.